Hi. You can hear the bird saying hello too. It's kind of early. You can tell by the sunlight behind me and the bird chirping like crazy and reminding me I need to give them more bird seed at some point. Well, you can tell it's nice and early. Anyway, fair to go ahead and get this biodiversity video done, and yeah, that's pretty much it. This is one of my favorite topics, and this one you're going to have some good info, but then some disturbing info, but that's kind of the way most of these go when you're talking about environmental stuff. So here we go. Now, where I say which do you like better, it's really more which one is a little more interesting. So when I am in an in-person class, I actually ask people to, say it out loud. So I'm going to pretend, all right? Which do you find more interesting? B. Because there's more than just that. Yeah, B. Now, which one's more interesting? B. Yes, B, because you have a whole bunch of different colors, and so it's a little more interesting than just dull. Now, which one's more interesting? Yes, B again, because now we have more shapes. Are you seeing the little thing here? It's this whole variety thing. Now, okay, granted, B might be less attractive, but you now have added texture. So now it's again a little more interesting. Kind of a pathetic picture, I know, so sorry. But A shows only all the same people. B, we get to see a lot of different cultures, different types of people. So of course this is going to be more interesting. This one, a lot of people have a hard time answering B, but B is more interesting because you have a lot more stuff going on. And this one is the hardest one for people to answer. A lot of people say A in class because it's so orderly. However, there's no variety at all. So I would say B is a lot more interesting. A lot of people in the class might not want to go walking around in B, although I would. I've been to places like this, and I'm honestly thinking of updating these pictures to include some of the actual places I've been to, because that might be more interesting too. But anyway, point being, variety. So that brings us to biodiversity. Bio means life, B-I-O, life. I believe I've mentioned at some point before, if not, here you go. Biology is the study of life, because bio is life, ology is study of. So there you go. This, however, is environmental science, but you can't talk about environmental science without talking about biodiversity. So bio for life, diversity is the variety. So biodiversity is literally the variety of life. I mean, how else could you live on this planet if we didn't have so many different types of life on this planet? So you can actually refer to this as our life support system. Now there's three components of biodiversity. There's the diversity of genes. So here I say like different dog breeds. You know that a Chihuahua and a Great Dane are both dogs, but they have different genes. That's what that's referring to. You're going to have I don't really need to go much more into that. Diversity of number of species. So instead of just talking about dogs, we have people and plants and cats. Two of my cats, they're over here just kind of chilling. I'd show them to you, but that would be odd. And I have no idea if it would show up. I might do it later, like when I'm done with the PowerPoint and I can see what you're seeing. Maybe, I don't know, possibly not, who knows. Anyway, that's the diversity of the number of species. Then we have the variety of ecosystems. So these are going to be various ecosystems that we discussed last time. Well, how interesting is that? I'm actually doing an edit this time. Not much of one, just had to cut some sections out because after I started recording, my kids got back from grocery shopping and I got distracted as my oldest walked by, and I thought I should probably go help. So, oops. Anyway, let's continue. So, species. There's an issue with the phrase species a lot of the time. Most people are like, oh yeah, I totally know what that means, but let me explain the issue. So, problems with the official definition, what word is that? Definition of species. I gave you the proper textbook type definition here, where a group of morphologically similar creatures which can interbreed to produce fertile offspring and are reproductively isolated. Morphologically, by the way, means they look alike. So the problems with this definition: one, things that are already extinct, like dinosaurs. We have no idea if they were reproductively isolated. We don't know if they could reproduce with each other. We can only go by fossils. We have no idea. Creatures who breed asexually, like bacteria, they just split. So we can't say that if they're splitting and they're not actually breeding with each other if they interbreed. So kind of messes that up. Then we have creatures who cannot be tested ethically, like crossing of a human and a chimpanzee. That is not something that would be a good idea. So let's just not even go there. That's just no. So the definition of species can't quite be tested that way. Now, with those examples I gave, you could very easily say, but they're morphologically similar. They appear just about the same. They have the same general this and that. Well, one of the big issues I have here is called the Arctic char. It's a fish, and I know plenty of people love fishing, so some of you might actually know about the Arctic char. So the Arctic char, fresh water, I was about to say grows, but yeah, grows will work, but they live in lakes. You can have an Arctic char that you breed, cultivate, whatever, in a lab. You take a bunch of these and you throw them all in a lake. They're going to spread out because they don't want to have too much competition between each other for their food. You will have some that'll be up here towards the shore. Why I can't think of the word shore, I don't know. But they'll be here towards the shore, some that'll be more towards the bottom of the lake, and then some that are kind of like free, just going through the whole thing. After a couple of generations, and when I say generations, I'm talking the fish generation, not our generations. Couple of generations of them breeding and having new babies, they start to change. They start to morph physiologically. They look different. They have entirely different diets because their bodies pretty much evolve to match the area that they are living in. And so you can go to one of these large lakes that has a whole bunch of Arctic char. I have no idea why a helicopter is flying over my house, but it even disturbed the kitties for a moment. Anyway, you can catch these fish from the lake, and you will catch 3 different fish that look completely different from each other. And then you take them back to the lab, and then you cultivate them in the lab for a while, and then they all go back to what you had originally tossed in the lake. So you can't just look at something and say, oh yeah, it's just like that. Not on the species end, but something similar that might help you with putting the connection. Something my mom has a tendency to do. My mom will look at a dog and then insist it's a whatever mix. Okay, as soon as you throw the word mix in there, just say mutt. You don't know, you're just looking and assuming you know. Unless you're doing a genetic test, you're not going to know if there's actually pit in there, or if there's Rottweiler, or if there's Chihuahua, or if there's Pekingese. You can say, oh, it looks kind of like. Feel free to do that, but unless you actually knew the mom or the dad dog, so you knew what breed they were, you can't just say, oh, well, it has this, even though people do it all the time. It's not that it matters, it's just one of those things that drives me nuts because I kind of want you to, know what you're talking about. Okay, here's another thing for the species. Another description is creatures who are related through phylogeny. Phylogeny is just like this big old tree. This means they have similar DNA, similar proteins like in your blood, similar biochemistry, and similar embryology. In one of the biology courses I teach, I actually cover the embryology. And it's just showing you that at a small enough level, so many similarities, like so many. One of my favorite things to point out, and it makes some people angry, and oops, sorry. There's something that goes around Facebook on a regular basis saying, would you end this child's life? And then they show a picture of what looks like, I'm just going to say an embryo because it's an embryo. But a lot of people think it looks like a little baby person. And then all these people act all upset and everything. And every time I see it, I comment and I ask them if they eat eggs or if they eat chickens, because the picture that they're using is actually a chicken embryo. And I'm like, dude, at least know what you're talking about before you post it. I have this thing about misinformation. You might have figured this out by now. And that's one of the things. But embryology, I personally think is really friggin' cool. If it interests you in the least, seriously, just Google it and you will be amazed at how similar so many creatures look all the way up to a certain point before they hatch or are born. And I have to say hatch or are born because I just used a chicken as an example, and they're not born, they're hatched. Anyway, I'm going to use my nifty little laser pointer here. Okay, so what it means here is right here, there was some kind of common ancestor, and then they branched off. And down here, you have snakes, and then this broke off into many different snakes, and then lizards. Now, this is just showing you that lizards are more closely related to snakes than they are to birds, because birds are up here on a totally different branch. So you come up here and you have birds and crocodilians. Crocodilians, it's because it's not just crocodiles, it's multiple things, and the example they give is an alligator. There's a few different things. And then the birds are up here because birds are closer related to the crocodilians than they are to the lizards, the snakes, or to mammals. Birds actually are listed with the reptiles, believe it or not. Now, way up here, we've got mammals. This is because mammals are way different than the crocodilians, the birds, the lizards, and the snakes. We are a totally other area. Opossum. Okay, little bit of tidbit here. Cracks me up every time I say possum. When my oldest Pax was a little bitty kid, and I'm talking like, 2, 3. When you're teaching them, you're like, what does a dog say? Woof, woof. What sound does a cat make? Meow. All that stuff. It's very wrong. It's horrible. It's twisted. But what I taught him, and for years, it would just make me crack up, and I still think about this, and he's 25 now, is it's like, what sound does an opossum make? Pum pum. Because we lived in Atlanta, and the only time we ever saw possums were when they were on the road after, pum pum. It's horrible. So sorry. I'm a horrible, horrible person. I know. Anyway, so this branch, the opossum is down here, and the human and the mouse is up here. The mouse is more closely related to a human than they are the opossum. But clearly humans and mice are completely different things. So each branch is just showing you where they separated. So this right here just lets us know that there was something that was similar but then split. Just like here, something split there to here. And that would be because opossums are marsupials and we are not. So simple little things like that. A lot of confusion about evolution comes from just not understanding the actual terms used. But this is not an evolution class. If you want to ask me questions, I will happily answer them. I just like to point out, because a lot of people immediately shut down when they hear the word. Darwin did not say we came from monkeys. Nobody said we came from monkeys. That is a misquote, and it drives me crazy, just so you know. All right, moving on. Intrinsic and utilitarian values. Intrinsic value is something that has value in and of itself. I would say this is pretty much everything on the planet. I don't think that an animal has to benefit a human to have value. I don't think a plant has to benefit a human to have value. So I am huge into the intrinsic value. I think everything is precious. And that's just, that's just me. Utilitarian value is a value that something has in order to meet another's end. A lot of people see things more as utilitarian. And so that would be like, let's see, trees. Not saying that the trees are valuable because they're trees, but saying that the trees are valuable because you can cut them, process them, and make timber to build a house. The house is definitely necessary, but you were looking at the value of the tree in order to build the house, not as in the tree that's supplying oxygen and maybe housing some animals. So it's two different things. Utilitarian values include goods like sustainable timber, services like ecotourism. Ecotourism is, it's one of those things. Sometimes it's absolutely wonderful. Other times it does more harm than good. So if you're into ecotourism, which is basically traveling to see different areas, more like outward, checking out the rainforest, tubing down a river, this kind of thing, make sure you're doing it with people in a company that actually understands the benefits versus the dangers. Example, real quick, is the second time I went to Belize was 2006, and that was to study ecology. So I was actually in Belize studying various ecosystems, going through Belize because they have various ecosystems. And when we were in the rainforest there, you have all these biology students, and we were going to go tubing down the river in the rainforest. And all these biology students, these ecology students, are lathering themselves with the highest number DEET they could find because they didn't want to get any bug bites. But if you put on a poison and then get into the water as it's washing it off, you are causing a chain reaction where you are killing the insects and the other things that are in the water, which then causes a long chain reaction that damages the rainforest more than you learning about the rainforest helps. So be careful and actually think through all of your steps. All right. Now, what do we get from biodiversity? I get heart. I love it. I think it's like the best thing. But everybody on the planet gets oxygen. We need oxygen. If we don't have oxygen, we die. That's a fact. That is not something that you can sit there and, debate. You cannot throw politics, religion, beliefs of any form into this one. And it's one of the few things in science or environmental science or environmentalism that everybody has to agree with, is that we need oxygen. All right, food. We get food because, oh my gosh, how boring would it be if all you had was rice every day for the rest of your life? Oh my gosh, we need a variety. Clean water. A lot of places, if you remember the habitats and biome thing when I talked about marshes, that helps clean up our water. We need different things in order for that. Medicine. A lot of people don't realize that one. The cool part with the medicine is a lot of people have grown up hearing that there's natural medicines. There's plants in the rainforest that help us with medicine, but there's also other animals that help with medicine. And the one I normally talk is about, what in the world just happened there? That I normally talk about is the box jellyfish. It's about the size of your thumbnail. I keep looking off because I'm trying to remember there's another PowerPoint where I talk specifically about the box jellyfish. And I don't think it's on this PowerPoint, ? But anyway, box jellyfish. Coast of Australia, there's a lot of deadly things. Pretty cool, want to go, but there's a lot of things that will kill you. Box jellyfish, one of the most venomous creatures. Big difference between venomous and poisonous. Poisonous means if you eat it, you get poisoned. Venomous means if it bites you, you get hurt. So there's a big difference there. So these are very venomous. one of the strongest neurotoxins out there. That's why they're so dangerous, is because they sting you and it goes straight to your brain. Now, what they have discovered, because a lot of people wanted to just try to eradicate them, and then you had the people saying, no, you can't just destroy it. There's a reason they're on this planet. Well, turns out they have found that the neurotoxin, the very reason people are terrified of the box jellyfish, actually is a painkiller that rivals the like of morphine, but it is non-narcotic and non-addictive. That's phenomenal, because if you have ever known anybody with an addiction issue, that's the hard part, is if they get hurt or they need surgery, they need something to help them heal. But anyone who's gone through an addiction problem, they can't take those types of medications. And so this is something to actually help. So yay. Anyway, aesthetics. Aesthetics just means it looks good, you know. And then, of course, ideas. Now, I want to point out this part right here. This is so cool. I want to say it's a caddisfly, but I always forget exactly which type of insect it is. But what it does, somebody discovered that they gather the materials around them and they make this cocoon of sorts, and that's where they go from larvae to adult. When they have shed their younger selves and they're ready to fly, they then break out and take off. So there's a company or two that puts the larvae of these insects in with precious gems and metals, little scraps like the stuff that's been taken off of other things or whatever. And when these guys are ready, they build these perfect little cocoon-ish. And I keep saying cocoon-ish because it's not really called a cocoon. I just can't remember exactly what it's called. They build this, and then when they're done, they pop out, and what you end up with is completely and totally 100% one-of-a-kind pieces of jewelry. And people pay good money for it. So, kind of cool. Now, here we go. Why should we be concerned about biodiversity? Well, because things are dying. Things have been dying off a lot. A lot of people will say, oh, well, that's always happened throughout history. Yes, it has, but not at the rate we are now. Even if you want to attempt to ignore the past decade or two, which is a little irresponsible, but you can try. You can look just at the Australian wildfires that happened at the end of 2019 through the beginning of 2020. And I know it's very easy to forget about it because so much has happened since then. The number of species they believe went extinct because of that wildfire is already terrifying, because it was just that bad. And that was covered in the natural disasters and how humans make them worse video. We are losing a lot. So we tend to lose somewhere as many as 3 species per hour going extinct. That means by the time you're finished with all of this, we're probably going to have lost about 3 species. This is disturbing. And now a lot of people say, oh, I just don't believe that. Well, it's because you're having a very narrow viewpoint of what a species is. Species, remember, include plants. It includes bacteria. It includes insects. It includes birds. It includes bacteria. There's a lot of things. There's millions upon millions of species. But why does it matter? Well, it's because whenever one species goes extinct, it affects a bunch of others. So, here we go. When I first started doing this, I used to draw this on the board. I have no board here. And I started making it this way so I could do it for online so people could always come back to it. So, clearly, yeah. Have you ever tried to draw something with a mouse? I'm just trying to get you ready for what's about to show up. I am not an artist. I have never pretended to be an artist. And I drew this with a mouse. Okay. Enough warning. Here you go. So this is my attempt to show you an example for biodiversity. I drew this to show you those little dots there. These are bees. I have to tell you these are bees because I couldn't draw them better than that. And yes, I know my flowers look like lollipops. Maybe I was thinking of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I don't know. And the weird little V things, those are birds. Again, not an artist, drawn with a mouse. Okay, so here we go. We have our nice little happy land. We've got birds and bees and flowers and trees, just like that song. I wonder who knows what I'm talking about. Anyway, so we're just here like la la la, chilling out. So now, if you're looking at this picture and you're like, okay, I want to get rid of something, what is the most likely thing that you're going to want to get rid of? Bees! Yes, bees. Almost every time people say bees. One time somebody said the person, and I was like, I can't do that. So we're going to get rid of the bees. Bam, no more bees. Alrighty, so no more bees. Now that we've gotten rid of the bees, what do you think might happen? Oh, wait, that was a food source or a pollination source. The bees cannot pollinate the flowers. And as you know, anyone who's ever been around flowers, you do tend to see the bees in the flowers. That's why the honeybee collapse is terrifying, is because the bees pollinate the plants. And yeah, so anyway, we got rid of the bees, so now we have no flowers. We have no flowers, and so a lot of the little things that were running around the flowers are now gone. And so now we have no birds. Holy crap. What happens now? Well, the birds aren't around to help spread the seeds anymore. Uh-oh, our tree's gone. And no, birds do help with spreading the seeds, but it's more like little berries and stuff. The apples that I drew, that's more from larger animals. But animals do spread the seeds. That's what the whole fruit is for. Anyway, so now anyone who's ever played old school Mario should recognize the sun at this point. So now we have no bees, no flowers, no birds, no trees. We have this harsh sun beating down on us. We're dead. There's no grass now anymore either. Everything's gone. It's just the sun beating down on a bunch of dead stuff. And then we're gone. Now, in reality, once we're gone, chances are the other stuff's going to build back up. But we're not going to go there because I don't know about you. I don't want to be gone. I want to stay here. So there we go. So which one do you like better? The one where we have life, or the one with the very angry sun? He's like, ha 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 ha, it is all mine. And I do wonder how many people played Mario, because when I did this originally, I swear I was thinking of that level where the sun is just I sucked at that one. I'd be like, run back, run back, run back, back, back. And oh my gosh, I was horrible. It was so much fun though. Anyway, there we go. Threats to biodiversity. You should be used to this because the habitats and biome thing by now. We have habitat destruction, pollution, species introductions, global climate change, and exploitation. Habitat destruction, kind of obvious. If you're sitting there plowing through an area in order to build shopping malls, subdivisions, house, anything, you have just cleared out a section that other things were living in, and so you have removed some of the diversity. Now, little by little, it might not seem as big, but currently they keep removing more and more of the Amazon rainforest because they want more and more pasture land, stuff to raise more cattle. And so considering the rainforest is like the highest level of biodiversity, you lose a lot when you're destroying that. Pollution, that might be an obvious one right there. The more junk we're pumping out, whether it be smoke from factories or chemicals or just garbage in general, we're destroying and killing different things. Species introductions, this was mentioned at the very end of the habitats and biomes when I talked about the lionfish. When you throw, say, like the lionfish out into the ocean, they go to the area around the coral reef, and the first thing they do is they munch and they eat the other fish that were already there. And they kind of take over the area, so you have just lost more of the diversity. Global climate change. I know some people don't believe in it, but quite frankly, anyone that I have ever met who doesn't believe in it tends to be of the kind that either is only getting their facts from various bias sources or random things posted on Facebook, or it's more of a I don't want to know. I think most of them, it's more of the I don't want to know. And anyone who says they do not believe in climate change, I would love to challenge to actually research it, look it up in scientific articles, not in political or Facebook groups or any of those things, because climate change is a fact. It's documented. It's factual, which goes with the it's a fact. You can look at just the temperature history chart and see how much it's been going up. If you have been paying attention just the past, 4 years, you should have been able to yourself visually see and personally experience the craziness to what's been happening to our environments around us. Not just talking about the pandemic, but it's been 4 to 5 years in a row that every year it's the worst hurricane season ever. It's the worst this time than it's ever been before. It's the strongest of this. If every year you're topping the previous year, that's letting you know you're escalating to something even worse. So understanding a proper definition might help you better comprehend. I don't know. I'm okay if people have different opinions, but when something's an actual proven fact and it's just people choose not to look at the fact, or they purposely cling to misinformation or a wrong definition, it kind of drives me a little bit crazy. Yeah. So I'll talk more about that at some other point. Anyway, exploitation. That's what the picture is. So there are places where you go and you will see something like this. Now, oh my gosh, this is just creepy as all get out. But a lot of people think it's really cute. And they'll see this little monkey walk up looking like a little person and they give him money. The monkey is trained to then take the money back to its handler, and it just keeps on going. But if you look at the bottom picture, that's how they train this monkey to behave that way. There are a lot of things out there where they're trying to force a certain action in order to get the reaction they want. So this happens a lot with various animals, but exploitation is also in land and property. As I am making this, the current administration has just torn down a whole bunch of things where they're about to start drilling for oil and stuff in protected areas in the Arctic that has been protected for over 60 years. It's one of the last of the completely protected areas, and that is straight up exploitation to say, hey, it doesn't matter if this is nature, I want that oil. There's a problem here. All right, human disturbance map. It's an odd map. All of that green does not mean we haven't damaged it. It just means when this map was made, there was more of the natural stuff. Notice where we are. Yeah, we've pretty much dominated and taken over a lot. Biodiversity, how many species are there? Well, one, we've already talked about the fact that species are kind of hard to define. But of the ones named, they have named about 1.5 million. But there's a whole bunch that we still haven't named. There's a bunch we haven't even discovered. And I know that makes it a lot easier to say, well then, why do we worry about things going extinct? The things that go extinct naturally, that's not a big deal. It's the things that we are making go extinct because of what we are doing. It's the difference between walking through the forest and accidentally coming across a cobweb and like, oh, and you set in, putting it away, versus driving down the road and purposely swerving to run over a snake. Okay? One, it happens. The cobweb stretched across like there, a bird could have flown through it. Anything could have flown through it. The snake cruising along over the the street and you purposely swerving, that is your action intentionally doing damage. That would not have happened. There would have been no other car coming along if we hadn't put the cars there. So that's the best analogy I can come up with right now. All right, Earth's biodiversity. I know it's a pathetic looking little chart, but it kind of helps because most of the species here for the biodiversity happen, well, for animals, happen to be invertebrates. So this is going to be things like insects and a bunch of little things. Then as we move around, you get more and more of other things. I just want you to notice of all of the Earth's biodiversity, of these animals, mammals are only 2%. And we are a small, small, small amount for the mammals. Now, here is where we talk about the background extinction rate. Again, one of the number one things people say about, I don't see what the big deal is. There have been extinctions throughout all of time. Yes, there were. However, we're upping the scale. We're making it happen a lot faster and in a lot smaller amount of time. So, background rate. Used to be one mammal species every 400 years. One bird species every 200 years. That's a long time to give it to go extinct. That's giving it time for nature to decide to put what else is going to fill that spot. Now, we have 10,000 times that rate. So we have anywhere between 20 and 75 plants or animal species go extinct each day. And again, a lot of these might be ones you don't even know about. In the overview PowerPoint, one of the species I pointed out was I believe it's the white northern rhino has gone extinct. Might not mean much to you because you're like, there's other rhinos. But that would be the equivalent of not thinking it's sad that, say, I don't know, we'll just use Georgia. Everyone in Georgia's dead. We wiped out Georgia. Who cares? There's plenty more states. What does that matter? And the thing is, I know some people really wouldn't care. I live in Georgia. I kind of wanted to stay here. So you have to really pay attention to all of life, not just pick and choose what you want. Greatest threat, of course, it's humans and our development. It's us deciding we need this space. And the audacity of a lot of humanity to decide how much space something else needs is crazy. And you will see this if you actually look at the rules and regulations, but like the laws and stuff like that. There was a strip mall and another Walmart being built in Miami, Florida a couple of years ago, and it was protected land, and they won the ability to build on this land because they brought up the papers that stated these animals only needed X amount of space. What? That's kind of like telling you only need this amount of space. Technically, yes, every single human could live in one room with a toilet. Will you be happy? No. Will you be productive? No. Will it cause you to shut down? Oh, probably, yeah. Same kind of thing. You can't say, okay, well, according to our statistics, the animals only need this much space. No. So that brings us to habitat fragmentation. Every time you cut through an area, you have fragmented the habitat. Yes, you just plowed straight through the center. There's plenty of space here. There's plenty of space here. However, by cutting out this area, anything that was here is now gone. And now there's new rules for where the animals can go. And when I say animals, I'm thinking all the way down to the little itty bitty guys. Okay? This is just an aerial view showing you how fragmented. And you can totally tell this is humanity because nature doesn't make such perfectly straight lines. Farther away view, so you can see all the areas where the plants, the trees, and everything was removed. It's causing damage, obviously. Now, natural resources. We have renewable and non-renewable. Renewable natural resources are going to be things like forests, the trees, the plants, the wildlife, soil. Believe it or not, soil can be a resource. That's how you're growing your food. Fresh water like lakes and rivers, wildlife, fisheries, rangeland. All of this totally renewable. Take care of it, keep cycling it. It can go on forever, but not if you strip it. So practice proper care, respect, that kind of thing. Non-renewable, minerals and fossil fuels. So any kind of ore, the copper, iron, this kind of thing, that is non-renewable. We will run out. Fossil fuels, that's going to be your natural gas, your petrol, your gas for your car, the oil you put in your car, coal. Even nuclear is non-renewable because for the nuclear energy, you need uranium, which is a mineral, which is non-renewable. So there you go. Benefits of biodiversity. We already covered a bunch of the benefits. Here's more. Here I'm just trying to show you different species and blah, 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 blah. I hate when I stumble on a word. I had a friend who used to say my tongue got in front of my eye tooth and I couldn't see what I was saying. And for some reason that actually helps you get untongue-tied. Kind of odd, right? Anyway, it shows you the potential uses and benefits. This is the utilitarian value of these various items. Oh, here's my box jellyfish, where I said the benefits of biodiversity, and I talked about the box jellyfish. So there you go, you get to see the picture of them, and I'm pointing like this because it's a laptop, but when I'm doing this, I look like I'm pointing at you, so I guess I can just do like that. It's early, I'm so sorry. We'll just move on because I already talked all about the medicines in the box jellyfish, but they're cute, aren't they? Well, I think they're cute anyway. All right, we're looking at yet another chart to really show you how low we are. Okay, so of all the biodiversity on the planet, about 75 to 76% are animals. And remember, animals include insects. So of this 75.7%, we have 72.7% are insects. Insects do a lot. So just saying, I hate bugs. Bugs are actually one type. They're not all insects. Just so you know. But they do a lot. This world would not work without insects. Just watch A Bug's Life. They'll tell you. Anyway, you go through all of these. And so of the 75.7% of all life on the planet, 3.9% are vertebrates. That means we have a backbone. Of the 3.9%, 9% are mammals. And I think on the next slide, out of the mammals, I show you how many are actually humans. Oh, it's not the next slide. It's in a little while. But the whole thing is to show you this, to this, to this, to this. We are like this much when it comes to how many people there are for the planet. And it's important to recognize it because we're the ones who are destroying the planet. I mean, when's the last time you saw a deer pollute the river? It doesn't happen. Well, I mean, other than if they crap in it, but that's a different story. Now, where is biodiversity? It's everywhere. Absolutely everywhere. Some places have a whole lot, like the rainforest and the coral reef. Some places, very, very little, like I talked about in the Habitats and Biomes video, like the Antarctic. There's only a little bit, but there's still biodiversity everywhere. Okay, threats to biodiversity. I think you already know this answer. It's people. And you have to point out it's just people because nature has always been nature, always will be nature. Nature doesn't sit there and pick one thing and pick it off because they like it a lot or it makes them money. Humans are the ones who do that. And I'm not saying all humans are bad because they're not. It's just a lot of humanity doesn't really open their eyes to pay attention to what's happening. So here we go. Hunting and overharvesting. Tiger, dodo, whales, sharks, all of these guys. Hunted, overharvested. The dodo, gone. And it's because of people. Whales, we've lost a lot of whales. We are almost out of tigers. That's in the endangered animals. PowerPoint. And sharks. I know a lot of people don't care about sharks. I love sharks. Sharks are my heart. And that's why I use this one. The hammerhead shark is my favorite shark. This shark was caught and released due to the shark finning group. I can't think of the right word. Harvesters. But anyway, they cut off the dorsal fin and the 2 pectoral fins and then just chuck the rest of the shark back in the ocean. It's disgusting. It can't live like this. You know it can't live like this. I would have less anger and less tears towards these people if when they caught the shark, they used all the shark. Because if you're going to feed your family with the shark meat, okay, you're feeding your family. This is just blatant for the money. This picture over here, these are all shark fins, all laid out to dry. So if this is what happened to each of the sharks they did this to, just think how many died for this. Now, where a lot of people don't care is they're like, well, they're just sharks. 1, they're living creatures. 2, they're not out there to kill people. And the people who get munched on by sharks, you have to remember, you went into their world. They didn't come to yours. At no point do you see a shark hopping up out of the ocean, walking to your house, opening the door, and then munching on you. It doesn't happen. And whenever you see stuff about shark attacks, if you look in the area, you will normally find a higher rate of pollution, and you will find less of their actual food source. So we're killing off their food sources, then going into their homes and then complaining and saying they're evil. They're not. They're just what they are. But here's the very disturbing part. A lot of sharks do not become reproductive or able to be reproductive, as in they can't have babies until they're like 12 to 14 years old. Some have to actually be in their 20s before they can have babies. So by randomly just getting them, cutting off their fins, chucking them in and letting them die, we are seriously narrowing the number of sharks in the ocean. And that is, well, disgusting and heart-wrenching. Threats to biodiversity, still extinction and population reductions. We have pollution, climate change, and invasive species. And so again, this is going over the other stuff. The climate change, it is warming up. Just because it snows does not mean that the overall is not warm. That is one of my pet peeves, is when somebody goes, well, how's that global warming when it snows? It's a pendulum. When it's really hot here, it then is really cold here. So if you remember a couple of years ago when it was so cold in the US that there were people in the northern states that were throwing boiling water into the air and it was freezing. If you look at that, which by the way, that was kind of cool, but the number of people who didn't test it first was insane. Never try to throw boiling water into the sky to prove that it freezes without doing a small test to make sure it does freeze. Because if you're not in an area cold enough, you're just going to get burned. Just so you know, it happened a lot. But anyway, a couple of years ago, the same time Americans and Canadians were throwing boiling water in the air and watching it freeze, the same year that Niagara Falls froze, the other side of the planet had the hottest season. There have been times in India where the pavement was melting, as in when people tried to walk across a street, their shoes got stuck in melted pavement. Right now, I think I just read the article this morning, Death Valley has hit over 130 degrees Fahrenheit. That's the hottest on record. So yes, it does happen. Due to the overall raising of the temperature, our glaciers are shrinking, they are melting, which of course is going to affect things like polar bears, the ones who live in that area. Pollution is the other one that really, really disturbs me, because we treat a lot of our products with various chemicals. No people live where polar bears live. However, we have polluted the planet to such a degree that the fish are absorbing enough of these chemicals that the polar bears that are eating the fish that have never been near people are now, when they do a necropsy, and a necropsy is just an autopsy for an animal, when they do a necropsy on a polar bear, they're finding these chemicals in their tissues. It's kind of disturbing, just so you know. Protecting biodiversity, so what can you do? That's the big question. Well, one, stop over-harvesting. Just because you say, hey, but this is the best price, ask yourself, why is it the best price? I'm not saying buy the most expensive thing, and I don't have a lot of money. I'm a friggin' teacher, and I have multiple part-time jobs because nobody seems to want to hire a full-time teacher. So I don't have a lot of money to burn. I really don't. And I have been beyond dirt poor. And so my goal a few years ago, and everybody laughed about it, was to hit the poverty level, because I was so far below the poverty level. I wanted to hit what they called poverty. And it was a very long struggle. So believe me, I do understand. However, when you say, hey, I'm going to buy this because it's cheaper, and you don't once think about all of the damage being done to give you this cheap price, you're part of the problem. You have to take a look. Sometimes you might have to cut something out you don't want to cut out, but you have to decide what's important. And so this is a very personal thing. For me, I like to know who makes my stuff, how it's processed, where it's gotten, how it's replaced, that kind of thing. Do I think everyone's going to do that? No. Do I hope at least a couple of people each time I teach this class start researching this and stick to it? Yes. So this totally for those couple of people who might make changes. Okay, that's with the sustainable yield. Don't take more than can be replaced in a timely manner. Hunting and fishing laws for every state. There's plenty of people who hunt and who fish. That's fine. That's what that license is for. That is to make sure you don't take something you shouldn't that makes it unsustainable. So people who hunt deer, you know, each year you're supposed to get a new license. Sometimes they'll tell you it's open season, take whatever you want, kill as many deer as you want. And it's because they have way overpopulated and they need to cull the herd. Other times you can only do this type. You can only, it's like what, a two deer limit and stuff like that. They do that because they're trying not to bring the numbers too far down. It's all in keeping the biodiversity in check, because if you have too many deer, there are certain diseases that rise. There's not enough food, they become sickly, and a lot of times they actually become aggressive. But if you keep the level just right, then everything around there survives. Same thing for the fishing laws. That's why they say, you know, if it's not at least a certain size, you have to throw it back. They're not being picky. It's because they're trying to get you to catch the larger fish because they already passed the reproductive stage. If you're catching the little ones who have never had a chance to make babies, you're removing an entire generation of fish from the water. So hunting and fishing laws seriously help protect biodiversity. Then, of course, protecting the habitats. So the refuges, the parks, the preserves, all of these types of things, that helps. And then, of course, the Endangered Species Act, which is to try to protect the species, keep track of the numbers, know which things to leave alone. And when you look at the endangered animals PowerPoint, you will see that I have them listed by least concern, and then concerned, and threatened, and endangered, and critically endangered. Pay attention to where something falls on that line, and that lets you know how much they need protecting. Like right now, for people who eat tuna fish, skipjack tuna fish, there's way more of those out there in nature than the albacore, because a lot of people eat the albacore. The albacore is now actually getting threatened because people are over harvesting albacore tuna. So if you want to make one simple change, if you could find more of the skipjack tuna and move away from the albacore tuna, that would actually help them, you know, rebuild a little. Okay, so this one I'm just gonna like on over because, yeah. It's basically just telling you island biogeography. The smaller the island, the fewer the animals and species that can live there. The larger the island, the more biodiversity there is because there's more space. This is the same for when you're like cutting stuff up in your yard. If you are mowing, if you are putting in streets, it does not only mean a piece of land in the middle of the ocean. Anytime you cut up any kind of habitat, it's making it's the island biogeography. So a moment ago, when I said that about putting a road right through this area, you have just split that in half. So you have brought down the number of species that can live there because, again, each one goes by the amount of space. So I should have just gone to this before I said that, but this is what I was talking about right there. Endangered Species Act of 1973, the goal was to recover species so they didn't need protection. So this is why they try to keep an eye out, and they actually have conventions, meetings. So all around the world, they're all supposed to get together and say, this needs to be put on the list. We are noticing a huge decline in this species. We need to protect it. The issue is a lot of times different countries, different cultures don't want to stop harvesting and using, like the shark fins. Ivory was a huge one, and we have lost so many elephants just for the stupid ivory trade. And so that's what these things are. Then, of course, we have a few more laws put in place to try to protect biodiversity. Endangered Species Act, again, what I just said, this is the list: endangered, threatened, all of those things. Once it gets to extinct, it's gone, like straight up gone. So you have to get involved before they reach that level. And that's why it's important to keep track, because just because there is a male and a female does not mean it's going to repopulate. I mean, imagine if someone just said, okay, you are male, you are female, and they took you and just shoved you into a room and said, all right, make babies. Not guaranteed. One, what if you're related? Genetically, that's not going to work. That's a huge one, because the idea of taking just two individuals and repopulating an entire species, there's not enough genetic diversity, and that's when you start to get all of the birth defects, all of the health issues. Anyone who's ever watched Wrong Turn, there you go. That shows inbreeding right there. There's a lot of issues if you try to take just two. So you need a large enough group to then repopulate, so you still have the genetic diversity as well, so it can repopulate the species. There are some cases that it's worked, other cases it hasn't. You have to get involved early enough for it to actually help. We really need to protect our hotspots. The hotspots are the area that has a whole lot. So again, rainforests. Our rainforests are huge. These are the areas we desperately need to protect, but sadly, these tend to be the areas that are more socioeconomically challenged. And so since they don't have as much money, development, these are the areas getting damaged now because they want the money, and so they sell off the land. There's a whole lot of stuff happening to these areas in, the sake of money. So that's it for the biodiversity presentation. There are going to be endangered animal things, coral reef things, a whole bunch of stuff, but just like my usual thing, I'm going to give you what I consider a cute picture, because look at him. And yes, I understand that tumblr.com is not a valid source, but when I first got this, that's what I got. I don't remember where I got it from, so at least I'm giving it some kind of credit. He's so cute. That's a Scottish fold kitten, just so you know. I want one day. I do. They're so cute. Anyway, here I just want to point out I did not make this whole thing from scratch. That's why I've said a couple of times I need to fix more of this. I originally got it from the link provided, and I am doing this to show you when you make something, when you do something, you still need to give credit where credit's due. I have intended to remake this PowerPoint so many times, but I keep not because I also end up liking to show you how you can do it and still show it somebody else's. I think that, yeah, that's about it. What I am curious about is, did anything I say throughout this biodiversity thing bother you more? And I don't mean my regular tangents. I don't mean, I don't like the fact that you keep trying to say climate change is real. I don't mean any of that stuff. I'm talking any of the threats, any of the stuff that's happening. Did any of it bother you? Or did it help you better understand what biodiversity is? What did you think of, the cheesy drawing? That kind of thing. I like feedback, because then at least I don't feel like I am just talking to a laptop, which is exactly what I'm doing. Because, man, I cannot tell you how awkward it is to sit here and just talk to this little green dot. Yeah, I think that's it. I think I am now going to go make more coffee because I want coffee. So that's it. Hope this didn't kill you too much, that you didn't mind it too much. And it's so funny, I read earlier today, someone said, why does everybody feel the need to wave and say bye when they end a meeting? Because they've never once left the room going bye. And now I swear I am tempted to start doing that every time I leave a room. And I don't know, I might do it. Anyway, I guess I will stop rattling. And yeah, I have no idea what video I'm making next. Who knows? I guess we'll find out, right? All right. See you next time. I didn't say bye.